The film starts with Mrs. Lee driving towards San Francisco with her grandson Tom on the eve of the Lunar New Year. Suddenly, some dark souls start chasing them. Mrs. Lee very calmly handles them while driving, but she calls out for help as she expects the worst is yet to come. We see 12 animals running on the bridge, tackling all the dark souls to free the path for Mrs. Lee. But the tiger sees that Mrs. Lee has been intercepted on the bridge by one Miss Lou. Miss Lou is the mistress of the dark souls, and she's after something. The tiger jumps right in between Mrs. Lee and Miss Lou in order to protect the guardian, Mrs. Lee. The animals are called the Zodiac warriors of the Temple of the 12, who have sworn to protect the guardian, protector of the Phoenix. 15 years later, Tom faces bullies in the high school, and when he refuses to hear bad things about his grandmother, his anger unleashes the power that he carries within him. It's only a glimpse, but it was enough to grab the attention of many. Tom meets with Rav, and when her mother comes to pick her up, she decides to come home with Tom later. Anyway, Tom reaches his house and seeing all the weird stuff hanging around irritates him. He removes them, but unbeknownst to him, those were the protective charms that stop evil spirits from coming inside the house. Soon after, we are introduced to Mr. Who is the tiger of the Zodiac warriors. He visits, sensing that the protective charms have been dispatched. Soon, their house is surrounded by dark souls called Yagwe. Mrs. Lee asks Who to protect Tom, and she will deal with Lou. Mrs. Lee almost wins against Lou when she gets a hold of her, almost grabbing the Phoenix Stone. But Mrs. Lee suddenly throws the stone to Tom, making him the guardian right at that moment. After that, Mrs. Lee activates all the protective charms together, which results in a deadly blast. From afar, Tom witnesses the ghost cart that comes when a great noble soul passes away. It is obvious that Mrs. Lee died on the spot while trying to protect both Phoenix and her grandson, who brings Tom to a safe place where he comes to know about the Zodiac warriors and how they swore to protect the guardian. Later that night, Tom has a dream where he sees a bright phoenix being covered in darkness, and a woman tells her that now he walks two worlds, the world of mortals and the world of magic. Soon the whole group of Zodiac warriors are reunited at the Temple of 12. However, some of the Zodiac warriors don't show up, which leads to an uneasy situation. In the meantime, Tom, to avenge his grandmother's death, goes to confront Miss Lou. The Zodiac warriors reach there as well, but it was already too late. They somehow managed to escape Lou's dark magic. However, a couple of Zodiac warriors become her captive in the process. Thankfully, the Phoenix Stone is still with the Guardian, but Tom comes to learn that Rav's mother is Miss Lou. Anyway, Tom focuses on his training. To gain complete power as a Guardian, he must be able to see the Phoenix inside the stone. Only Tom's lineage is able to see that, and this is the reason why they have been Guardians all along. Since Tom is failing every time, Who loses his patience and kind of shouts at him. Later, Mistral the dragon tells Tom that on that night, during the fight between Mrs. Lee and Lou, Who died protecting him. Later, after thrashing Lou in the battle, Mrs. Lee gives a part of her soul to save Who. This is the reason why a part of her soul remains inside Who. Tom goes back to his home to understand the reason behind choosing him as the Guardian. Later, he sees her grandmother, but thanks to Rav, who tells him that she is Lou in disguise. They somehow manage to escape, but Lou has the Phoenix with her. Tom lets the remaining Zodiac warriors know that he has lost the Phoenix, so they start finding it. Who tells Tom that Lou will use the stone on the eve of the Lunar New Year when the sun sets. Tom uses his senses to track down Lou in the crowd. After a lot of fighting, Tom fails to protect Hugh from being caged inside Lou's umbrella, but just before that, Tom sees Mrs. Lee in Hugh's eyes. Later, with Rav's help, Monkey frees all the other Zodiac warriors. It is again too late as the sun is almost down and Lou has activated the Phoenix Stone to suck all the souls out of the mortals. The Zodiac warriors fail to use any power to stop Lou from destroying the world. Just then, Tom finally sees the Phoenix inside the stone. Tom sort of removes the darkness that is torturing the Phoenix with compassion and lets her shine as brightly as possible. This completely destroys Lou from the scene, giving back the souls to all the mortals. Thus, Tom saves the world with his grandmother's advice that says they do not always have to fight. All they need is to be a little clever and compassionate. But during this, Tom dies as the ghost cart arrives to pick up his soul. But Mr. Who, with the help of the other Zodiac warriors, performs Nekwa, which leads him to the Ocean of Tears. There, Mr. Who pleads to the Empress so that she can save Tom. Finally, just like Mrs. Lee, Mr. Who gives away a part of his soul to save Tom. Later, you see them reconciling as a family. Mr. Who offers his shop as Tom's new home. In the mid-credits scene, we see Tom training with Mr. Who. The more Tom is struggling, the more Mr. Who is leveling up his training. Suddenly, we see Tom jumping from a height and landing on the ground like a tiger. Since Mr. Who has given a part of his soul, Tom, the first of his lineage, has turned into a Zodiac warrior apart from being a Guardian as well.